Today is February the 16th, 1994, and I have the pleasure of interviewing Dr. Al Hurley, the President of the University of North Texas and Chancellor of the University of North Texas and the Health Science Center. I'm Blake Hailey, and we're making this video in the University of North Texas Health Science Center Library in Fort Worth, which is also known as the Gibson D. Lewis Library. And Dr. Hurley, I'd like to thank you again for setting aside some time to be with us today and do the interview.
My pleasure to be here.
I'd like, if we could, you've been, well, President and Chancellor since, what, around 82 at UNT, or what was North Texas State back then. What was your background before you came to UNT, and how did you decide on that particular university to start another career at?
Well, let me just say by way of background that before I became President Chancellor, as you've described here in introducing me, I was for 17 months a Vice President for Administrative Affairs at North Texas. And prior to that, I came to North Texas from a career in the Air Force. I've been in the Air Force for 30 years. And when I was about to retire from the Air Force, I was in touch with the man who is my predecessor, Dr. Frank Vandiver. And he invited me to apply for the Vice Presidency for Administrative Affairs at North Texas. Mm-hmm. And so I retired from the Air Force in August of 1980, and on the 1st of September started at North Texas.
Oh, okay. What were some of your goals when you first came to UNT in regards to what was then TCOM?
Well, I got involved with TCOM almost immediately because at that time the Vice President for Administrative Affairs at North Texas was responsible for the development of the physical plant down here at TCOM. And I'd been on the job only about 2 days when I was directed to come down here to help push to completion the planning, the contracting for MedEd 2. Mm-hmm. And so I was on this campus very early on and was very intensively involved here during the fall of 1980. And I guess it was in January of '81 that we finally were able to get the bids worked out, the contracting worked out, so as to begin the process that led to the creation of MedEd 2.
Oh, you were definitely in the early stages then, and,
yes.
and watching
yes.
the development. Was there a need that you felt for community support for TCOM back then and today?
Oh, I think there really, when you get right down to it, as a public institution, every public institution does need community support. I think that one of the marvelous things that's happened here in Fort Worth across the years that I've been associated with this institution has been the growth in that support, the way in which the Fort Worth community's leadership has come together to say that this is Fort Worth's medical school.
Did you have any type of plan of action in regards to that? Or?
Well, after '82, February of '82, when I took on my present job, I was involved in efforts to try to involve to seek out support here in Fort Worth for the medical school. And across that period of time, especially a little later in the decade when Dr. Riches became the president here, I was directly associated with efforts to try to increase the awareness of Fort Worth about what was going on here.
Were there some specific events that you can
call
to memory?
Oh, sure. There was a memorable meeting with some of the leadership here in Fort Worth. I happen to know Mr. Bill Marquardt, who was the Texas Utilities leader in this community in those days. And he and I met to discuss how we might mobilize support for the school. As a result of that meeting, we set up a larger meeting that involved many key people here in Fort Worth, where we began to tell the story of the medical school. Dr. Riches deserves, of course, the bulk of the credit for the day in and day out effort that he has made to increase that awareness. across the years, he has set up a process whereby I think all the people in Fort Worth, various constituencies in Fort Worth now have been here to the school more than once, and they now are far better acquainted with this institution and what it's all about than they were, say, back in 1980 when I arrived. He came, I guess, in 81, in that spring of 81, I believe he arrived here. So he was here came here a few months after I did.
So y'all had a long relationship together then, kind of watching this thing
Well, I've known him,
grow.
yes. He came here initially as the dean. Well, in those days, he was not the dean. The president was also the dean, but he was Dr. Riches was the vice president for academic affairs.
So that's probably helped then in the initiatives to bring us to a health science center, to having the two of you there.
Of course. The fact that we've had an excellent relationship over the years and still do, and I think that's been central to getting the job done here at both institutions.
Were there some hard decisions and choices that you had to make in order for us to become a health science center, or is it all pretty, 1, 2, 3?
Well, I think all these things just take time. I think timing, of course, is of the essence, and I think several critical steps occurred in the late 80s as we moved toward the eventual decision by the legislature to let us move to a health science center. I include in that process a growing awareness that the medical school could not do it by itself, that we had to have here an additional element, hence the support that was given in Denton to the creation of a School of Biomedical Science here. As you know, I'm sure the previous interviewees have told you about the way in which basic science was developed here, largely through the efforts of faculty at UNTHSC. And then, of course, the years, a independent, separate faculty evolved here, and that faculty in time was moved to a position where you could justify a School of Biomedical Science. And I think that was a very important step here in adding credibility to the case for a health science center by having a second element here in Fort Worth.
So it is necessary then for the growth of UNT and TCOM to become a health science center.
Well, of course, the other dimension here is that I think it's very important for the university to have an association with as strong a medical activity as possible. There's an old saying that no university can be a great university unless it has a relationship with a medical program, and I think the reverse can be said as well. And so I think there's a natural setting here for joint activities between the two institutions, and I think that's been enhanced, of course, by the establishment of the Health Science Center.
Do you see this Health Science Center different from the other health science centers in Texas? Do you see it has some things
yes.
to offer others do not?
Well, I think there are distinct developments here that do set it apart, this Health Science Center, apart from the others. The emphasis here is not has not so far been on bricks and mortar or building very large complexes. The emphasis here has been on trying to be on the leading edge of medicine by emphasizing primary care, ambulatory care, ideas that are very compatible with the osteopathic tradition. So this has been a distinctive institution in that regard. I would hope that in the ongoing discussions that we have about creating a program in public health, that there will be distinctive from the viewpoint of the collaborative nature of the programs, that indeed involving both the campus in Denton as well as the campus here.
So you do see a lot of connection then between the two campuses, can definitely work together in various other departments then.
Well, I'd say there's enormous potential to do that. We already have some signs of that activity. For example, if you look at the work of our School of Community Service in Denton and the increasing involvement down here of certain faculty members from Denton, most notably those in areas such as sociology and also those who are associated with our Center for Studies in Aging. In fact, the joint program now in aging for the two institutions was a direct result of having the capability in Denton.
Do you see some other areas that could be linked together, say other departments or programs you have
Well,
at UNT?
certainly if we're able to work out all the planning for the public health initiative, I would see a strong potential for involvement by certain elements in our arts and sciences program at North Texas, environmental science, which is a program that's growing rapidly at North Texas. We have a new master's and doctoral program there and a very strong faculty, and there are several people there who are quite interested in working in the public health arena with faculty here at this campus. Similarly, the work that's already underway in sociology, various aspects of the School of Community Service can be strengthened through this public health effort.
So there's definitely a great potential then for a lot of things.
And I would hasten to add, though, I think there's some concrete evidence of accomplishment. If you look at some of the work that's going on, as I say, in aging, if you look at, well, a case in point would be the grant that Dr. Knievel won the other day, which a very significant number of dollars. And that really, I think, is a sign of enormous progress. But behind it all, as Dr. Knievel would be quick to acknowledge, there was a very significant collaboration with faculty in Denton.
That's excellent then. Why was this the right time to start a Health Science Center initiative? And I believe that was, what, about 1990 or 91, thereabouts?
About time. I've forgotten the precise year when it all crystallized. I'd just say that in terms of I guess it was the legislative session for 1993 when the matter was considered formally by the legislature, but the idea was out there certainly in the early 90s, probably from 1990-91 forward. It was the right time, I think, because of an awareness that the medical school had reached a certain level of development. I think that was important. Also, we were able to work out the matter of the transfer of the School of Biomedical Sciences here, and really what we transferred was the core of the program in Denton to this campus, and then the label School of Biomedical Sciences was established to involve that core.
Were there a lot of decisions and a lot of concerns that you had to address before the Health Science Center became a reality?
Well, certainly we always have to work with the people in Austin, most notably the people on the coordinating board, and a lot of work had to take place there to make sure that the people of the coordinating board were comfortable with this development. Now, it of course required legislative action to give us the name Health Science Center, but it was very important to have laid a foundation with the coordinating board and its staff as part of the process. And so that always takes time, always involves a lot of give and take before you get a result. Indeed, any significant work with the coordinating board, in my experience, almost inevitably involves a negotiation.
Are we still waiting on some of that to take place, like with the SACS, I believe it's called, and that type of thing, or are we?
I'm sorry, I don't know.
The accreditation and all that, is that?
Oh, well, that's a different element. That's SACS. You're thinking of the Southern Association of Schools and Colleges. Well, that's a different initiative, and relates to an effort by this Health Science Center to match an achievement of the other activities in the state, which are also accredited.
Has the relationship with the faculty at both institutions always been pretty, it seems to be in very good shape today. Has it always been a
well, I think there were some growing up pains. I mean, there were issues relative to assignments down here, who would come here, or who would how work would be done. And over the years, there certainly have been, as you might imagine, a lot of give and take. But I think I think what counts would be the end result, and the end result is what is here today.
Do you see the missions of UNT and the Health Science Center in regards to, well, we'll start with research. Do you see that changing with this creation of a Health Science Center?
Well, I would hope that the research element would be strengthened by the creation of the Health Science Center. If you consider the many, many dimensions we already have in Denton, for example, we have more than 35 doctoral majors in Denton. We have, and of course, if you're going to have 35 plus doctoral majors, you must have a very strong research program in order to support the doctoral work, and vice versa. So we had a very good foundation to begin with. I think opportunities that are now open to us through the Health Science Center establishment include, as I've mentioned, public health, but some other activities that I expect we'll be thinking about in the years ahead, various forms of allied health, for example.
Do you see the role, the educational aspect of institutions changing in any way?
Well, I would hope that we'd be able to strengthen the educational role. For example, the basic development of physicians. After all, that's the cornerstone of what this institution is all about, the development, proper preparation, training of osteopathic physicians. And I would hope that their education would be enriched by the association with the other elements in a health science center. I think there's a chance for the individual student doctor to become exposed to a whole range of issues that he or she might not have encountered had this only been a medical school. A facet here too is that right from the beginning we did encourage students who were enrolled in the medical school to consider perhaps pursuing graduate study in the biomedical sciences at the same time they were pursuing their DO degree. And I think we've had maybe 2 or 3 who actually completed the Ph.D. as well as the DO degree. I would expect that with the creation of the biomedical sciences activity here on the campus now, that that opportunity for will really be greater. I personally think that's very important for the development of the osteopathic profession, because if you stop to think about it, these schools require very, very special people to operate, to staff, and part of the credentialing that's process that's involved really has to focus on the need for DOs who also have PhDs. And the profession is growing at such a rate, the number of new medical schools is increasing, and as that happens, the requirements for the profession to be able to perpetuate itself, those requirements are much heavier than they were in 1980.
Definitely a lot of changes then have taken, or are taking place.
Certainly.
What do you see as the next step or the next series of steps for the Health Science Center that you need to make?
Well, I've mentioned the creation of a public health program. Perhaps someday a school of public health is probably the priority right now. But I also see some allied health activities being developed here. I think there are opportunities that perhaps we don't even imagine right now that could or can't even imagine at the moment, but that as this whole issue of healthcare reform gains strength in the country, I believe our Health Science Center is especially well positioned to respond to whatever opportunities occur.
Do you see some challenge or any kind of stumbling block for UNT and Health Science Center?
A fundamental one is funding. I mean, reality is that since 1985, the state's ability to fund us properly, that ability has declined. And an issue for us in each legislative session is to work through with the legislature an understanding of the kind of support we need in order to do a quality job. And that side of our situation has gotten more and more difficult.
So that you see as your big challenge then is the funding.
Funding is
more
critical.
Will have to come from the private sector and so forth.
Well, hopefully, and of course there are efforts underway here now to do that, more fundraising. There's a Vice President for Development here, Mr. Davenport, and I would expect you'll see more and more efforts here, just as you would see up in Denton. At Denton, we've just really gotten into fundraising in a significant way ourselves, and it's just part of what we do. However, we always have to understand that these are state institutions, institutions that fundamentally do depend upon the support of the legislature. You can do certain things to enrich your work. You can add, if you will, a dimension to the whole enterprise through private fundraising. But when you get right down to it, we do depend upon the state.
So there is still outside sources and so forth you can work through.
Yeah, you can help yourself. Certainly there is help out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I would expect that as Fort Worth becomes even more aware of the good things going on here, that there'll be greater support from the Fort Worth community.
Do you see the Health Science Center playing a role in Yeah, it plays obviously a large role in Tarrant County. But what about Denton County? Do you see it can have a lot of impact up there?
Well, I think there's potential there. Of course, there are, in my experience, quite a few DOs who are up in Denton. You know, Denton has in the county has many rural areas where you have DOs who are serving, doing very well. In our own city of Denton, we have more than a few DOs. We have DOs at our health center at the university, serving the students. So yes, the presence of the physicians who've been trained here is increasing in Denton County. I do see a benefit from the viewpoint, again, of this collaboration between the two institutions in terms of the programs that we hope to see emerge. The public health program itself, if we're able to do what we'd like to do, we would certainly be able to strengthen the support for the public health activities of the county and other counties in the area. So the influence of this institution through the Public Health Initiative could extend even to a far greater dimension than it has already through the graduation of DOs.
Do you see your role as Chancellor changing in the near future now with this creation of the Health Science Center?
Yes, it isn't so much my personal role, but rather the role of the Chancellor. I do anticipate that by the end of the decade that maybe a different organizational arrangement will be appropriate, that a system might well be created. By system, I mean some independent office, if you will, where you would have a Chancellor and a staff whose job would be to supervise the work of this institution and the institution in Denton, and perhaps others. That kind of organization may occur. I don't believe it's going to occur during my time, but I would see it happening certainly as we get into the next century. I say that because of the increasing complexity of the work here, in addition to the already great complexity of the work in Denton.
So kind of splitting up the job a little bit then.
Yeah, I think that might happen. When we started here, I was present when the decision was made to have a chancellor. And at that time, what was driving it, and this goes back to, I guess, 1981, the decision at that time to create a chancellorship directly reflected a desire to have an operating head down here who would be a president. Mm-hmm. And that was very appropriate at that time, but across the 80s, since this was a relatively small operation, that you could have a person in Denton who would be both chancellor and president. But as I say, as this place expands now and new activities emerge here, it's getting more complicated and probably would require a different kind of supervision.
Definitely sounds like sometimes it's probably more than you can work with.
Well, so far so good, but you asked me to forecast where we're going, and I think that's one real possibility. Again, not right away, but I would say maybe by the end of the decade or somewhere early in the next century.
Dr. Hurley, we've covered a lot of ground here. Are there any areas that I might have missed that you want to discuss and mention?
Well, I think we ought to, again, state for the record what an impressive job the people here on this campus have done over the years. I mean, they've really brought this institution a long way, and Dr. Richards and others here deserve an enormous amount of credit for what has been achieved. When you look at the possibilities, one of the reasons I say this place is becoming more complex, you just look at our relationship now that we have with something called the Tarrant Medical Education Consortium, the way in which we're involved directly with John Peter Smith Hospital, with the Harris Hospital System, with Southwest Medical School from Dallas, with my university, and then with this Health Science Center. All that would not have happened had not a lot of groundwork been laid by the people here. So I think we have a great deal to be proud of here and what's been achieved in a very short time. As if you look at the life of institutions, after all, this institution really just got started in 1970, and that's a very short time.
It definitely is, and thanks to your help, it's definitely come a long way.
Well, I'm pleased to have at least been a party to the work here, but again, the credit for what's been achieved should go to the people who are here.
Any other areas you'd like to mention?
Well, one other dimension you might, I think the record ought to reflect, and that's the very fine support that we've had from our Board of Regents. We could not have made the progress that we see here unless we had a board that was committed to the development of this institution. And I think it's accurate to say that during the years that I've been associated with the two institutions, the Board of Regents has been totally supportive. And the various members of the board at critical points have come forward to lend a hand in helping to promote a better understanding of this institution. And so I think let's not overlook them when credit is being passed out for what's happened.
So there's definitely a good working relationship between the administration here and the Board of Regents in Denton.
That's right. Well, the Board of Regents really is here too, in a sense. I mean, yes, they have the secretary, executive secretary of the board is in Denton, but as a practical matter, their role extends to both institutions.
So like then everything is working cohesively then, and
well, we're very hopeful that that will continue, and as I said, we're blessed with good people, and I'm encouraged to think that we're going to achieve some very, very fine things.
It's like we have some good things from what you've indicated this morning coming in the future, and I do appreciate you taking time out of your hectic and busy schedule to meet with us this morning. It's been
as an historian, I could not say no to you. As you may know, that's my own field, so I'm very interested in oral history, and I'm delighted that I had a chance to participate.
Well, when I saw your synopsis, which I was very glad to get, it was just perfect. And I saw that, the history part of it, I knew that we had the right man for what we were doing. And again, I appreciate your time and your help.
Yes, well, I appreciate the chance to talk to you, and I look forward to seeing the product of the interview, see how it all comes out on the tape.
Well, I hope that it's satisfactory. Thank you again, Dr. Hurley.
Thank you.
And with that, we'll close this particular interview. Thank you.
Thank you.